Purnima Venkatesh, co-chair of YA.
Good evening, Purnima. Lovely to meet you.
Same here, ma'am. Lovely to have you today evening. Good evening, everyone. Along with our chairman, Mr. Kalyan, and myself, Purnima Venkatesh, co-chair of YA, welcome you all to today's learning session on embracing identity in the pursuit of excellence by Ms. Anjali Rajgopal, who is a motivational speaker, identity advocate, and founder of Touch PR. I acknowledge the presence of Mr. Ram, Learning Vertical Chair, and Co-Chair Mr. Suraj, and Mr. Faisal, Chair of moderating today's session. I would like to share a brief note about us. Young Indians is an integral part of CII, a member-driven, non-profit and non-government organization that plans and executes nation-building projects based on the three pillars: youth leadership, nation building, and thought leadership. Under youth leadership, we empower college students under Yuva and engage members with learning sessions and national summit and international engagements. Under nation building, we do projects that fight against child sexual abuse, road safety, gift and organ, and rural initiative, etc. And under thought leadership, we do online campaigns, petition, and also engagements with the government. We were formed in the year 2002, and today we have almost 47 chapters across the country with more than 3,500 members and 30,000 UA students as our members. The objective of our forum is to ensure that the current generation is involved in shaping the future of India as a developed and inclusive nation. Now over to Mr. Vinod, co-chair of UA, to do the speaker intro.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction about YA. And good evening, ma'am. And
Good evening.
To introduce about Ms. Anjali Rajgopal, she is a self-starter, the entrepreneur, and a pioneer of all things digital. She headed the e-commerce division of Indian Terrain after trailblazing the PR and marketing industries with a PR firm Touchy. Her personal story of courage and determination is loaded with layers of identity, humor, and acceptance. She chose a path of courage and triumph, embracing perspectives and living her dreams. It's not uncommon to hear stories of drama, but it is so very rare to listen to the courage behind it. Her talks inspire, move, and shake one's perception of oneself. Her thoughts on the ever changing reality of identity is an everyday conversation to have with oneself. She speaks about the choice we make, the paths we pursue, and the stories we tell the world. She discusses the narratives and uh, sorry, constructs of identity in our society and how we can use this knowledge to create a bigger and better impact on the lives we touch. In her own unique way, she enriches people's lives by helping them harness their identity into a superpower. We welcome you, ma'am, and the session is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So is it now over to me then?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
okay, so just quickly, guys, it's Touche PR. Okay, Touche. I think everyone had like 3-4 different ways of pronouncing it. So let's just call it Touche, but that is my team's fault. We should have said some people. So yeah, so just quickly, Ram, just quick question. Do you want me to just jump into introduction and then how we just follow the flow that you sent me?
Yes, ma'am. You speak, then Faisal will do the questions which we have got from all the viewers, which they wanted to do it. And then we will go with the questions from the users.
Yeah, okay. So, guys, all of you, welcome. And it is an absolute honor for me to be a part of this session today, CII Young Indians. Thank you, Ram, especially you, for thinking about me and remembering me after we met so long ago, 2015, Raila, I believe. So a little, I know there was a bit of a tongue twisting introduction about me. So we will put all the big words aside. And since that is actually the normal bio that we send out to people, no one actually has to read it aloud. So I understand now we will shorten and simplify. So I don't know how much, has my bio been circulated, or how do you?
No. We just told about the basic things.
Not able to hear you. I'm not able to hear you.
We just told about the basic things.
Okay. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah, we are hearing you good, ma'am.
Great. Okay, well, as you know, name has already been introduced. I'm originally actually born in Lucknow, raised in Chennai, studied all over the world, actually. I've studied in the UK, in the US, and then came back to India in 2007 end, was here for 8 and 9, and went back to the US in 2010 to 12, actually 14. So since, I don't know how many people we have here, but I will let me put my introduction into the context of today's speech, because we're talking about embracing identity in the pursuit of excellence. So this has to do, and I would like to introduce myself in terms of my life story, in terms of my pursuit for excellence across academia, across business, across entrepreneurship, and across motivational speaking, as I'm currently doing. So my dad was a cop when I was born in Lucknow. So he was an IPS officer. So we moved down to Chennai when I was pretty young, and I have a younger brother. So then he then chose to give up the service to start a business grown, and both are publicly listed companies. One is called Celebrity Fashions, one is called Indian Terrain Fashions Public Limited. So I was a pretty happy young person. We're 4 people in our family. I've always got a lot of support and love from my parents. And I had absolutely no complaints when I was in school. So I was, while I was preparing to push off to the US for my undergraduate studies, I met with probably what I thought was a million times a COVID in 2002. So I was 19 years old at that time. So I was traveling to Bangalore with my mother and my driver and a colleague in the backseat, and we met with a life-changing car accident, at least for me. So at that time, my face was smashed into about 400 pieces. And in 2002, there wasn't much, the medical help was not as it is today. So I, not just in that first few months of March 16, 2002 is when it happened. So I not just lost my face, I lost 75% of my vision. I could not smell, and I was definitely not, and I was 100% blind, actually, the first couple of months. So devastated by it, to say the least. My father, who was at that time had just started Indian Terrain, had pretty much, because my mother was also hurt in the accident, so he had absolutely no idea what to do. And the doctors here all over India were refusing to touch it because it was a very, very complex procedure. It was reconstructive surgery, it was ophthalmology, it was neuro, it was everything. And, and time was ticking. So the first 3 months, as my brain swelled, I started to lose most of my vision, and most of it, which I did not get back. I even currently only have 75% of my vision. So what happened then was, then we flew to the US in 2002. So in May, the doctors decided to operate on me. And they also, and having to do it because the medical situation was so severe, and I was, my brain was swelling, and they thought I would die. So they went ahead and did surgery on a girl they had never seen before. So that was where my journey actually started. So 2 years into that journey, I was still in the hospital. I spent 2 years, my 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd birthday were all pretty much in hospital. So what happened was, I had to struggle with an identity which was not just lost, but I had been given a face that was not mine. So at that age, having that taken away from me was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to. In an interview I gave recently to a magazine, I sort of had a choice at that time to live in the world of the Olympians or live in the world of the Paralympians. Nobody would have faulted me if I had chosen to say, I have a disability, I have these challenges, I'm going to have lesser goals and dreams. But I didn't. I did not want my goals and dreams and aspirations to change even one bit, regardless of what had happened. So I still chose to go to university. So I went to college, even with most of my eyesight missing, half my abilities present, and my face still in reconstruction. It took years to fix. Now it's been 18 plus years, so now we have some semblance of normalcy. But I still do not look like the girl I was on my 19th birthday. So basically what happened was the years after that, I would describe as years of struggle, because I did all my years of university in that state of immense, and I still went forward. So I got my undergraduate degree between the University of Chicago and the University of San Diego. I lived in Mexico for 6 months. I learned Spanish. I learned how to dance the salsa, the merengue, the bachata. I came back to India in 2008 and 9, worked in media. I worked in Indian Terrain for one year, but then decided that I needed to spread my wings. So I went to, I did 1 year with NDTV. I was a radio jockey with Chennai Live. I was a columnist with the Deccan Chronicle. I did the whole media gamut. It was as if I wanted to live life 20 times the amount I ever wanted to live it before my accident happened. So but in about 2010, I hit an intellectual ceiling and I wanted to study more. So I moved back to New York and did my master's in my MS in public relations and corporate communication at New York University. I then worked with several firms in New York till 2013 mid, and then returned to India. I came back to India and started my own PR firm, Touche, as you mentioned, in 2013. I ran it 2013 to 16. We did a lot of fantastic work. In fact, Indian Train was one of our main clients. So we did work in retail, we did work with hospitality, we worked with authors, dancers, events, the whole gamut. But then came the question of scale. So I realized that basically PR being a service-based industry, you all will understand that you cannot necessarily scale to the extent that you can in another business. And I've always been somebody who always chased bigger dreams than I had. I was always moving. I've never been static in my life. Accident, no accident, bad situations, good situations. I've always been moving. So I then had the big conversation with my father. So he said, "Why would you like to join Indian Train?" And while I always wanted to, my biggest thing is I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to do something of my own. So when I joined Indian Terrain, I not just joined as the digital head, but I also incubated the e-commerce channel. So the e-commerce vertical was entirely incubated by me, and we had a growth of 2000% plus in the year 2018-19. So my career has spanned various different aspects, different verticals, different industries, but essentially the common denominator here has always been growth and been the pursuit of excellence. But overall, the overarching theme of my life has been embracing identity. Because before we all are a job or a role or a business person or an employee, we have to be okay with ourselves first. And we have to know what that is. Are we doing what we love? Are we doing what we are best at? Is what we love and what we are best at actually different? Is there a way to make it the same? How many chances do you get before you have to settle for the right job? I went through all of these questions. And I think that having had that accident forced me to deal with my identity much earlier than most other people do. So one of the main things I believe is life, not be condemned by your circumstances. Life shouldn't condemn you. You shouldn't be stuck being this person or that person. You should be whoever you want to be. Now, I know sometimes that is easier said than done, and we will get into that a little bit later. But what I wanted to say is that what I wanted to share with you guys is that whether I've been an entrepreneur in my own company or whether I've incubated a startup-like division within a bigger industry like Indian Terrain, or chosen to do outreach now as I am doing, it's always been the pursuit of being my best self. So, and my best self has not been defined by what I cannot do. It has always been defined by what I can do. And I cannot do probably 100 more things than most normal people. I can't drive. I cannot see stairs. I would not be able to smell a fire. I will probably fall down the stairs in a new building. These are all every plane I ever get on, get off, I will almost trip, but I try to make out by hearing. And I've always found that my strength and ability to conquer and achieve has come from inherently embracing an identity of excellence, regardless of what my situation was. So I've never lived that victim life, like "Oyoyo murga didache" kind of thing. My Tamil is a little bit bad, but it's kind of when I left India in 2002 for my first surgery, when we did not know I would live. I think the one person that I spent the most time with, and the one person to this day I think holds my DNA, is my father, because we have both always been doers, and we've never taken no for an answer. And till date, I don't take no for an answer. No is just not in my vocabulary. However, I have had a journey of having to accept my circumstances and worked around them to see what else I could do. Now, I'm trying to tell a very long story in a very short period of time, because I assume a lot of you are entrepreneurs, want to be entrepreneurs, business leaders, change makers, thinkers, educators. So I think the most important lesson that I think that we have all been missing. So most people ask me, Anjali, what are you doing now? Okay, what Anjali is doing is trying to make the identity discussion a mainstream discussion that the young, the old, the educated, the uneducated, everyone has to embrace and conquer before their life starts, rather than make do or make peace with what happens when you're 60. Okay, why are we all sitting with midlife crises? Because we didn't deal with things earlier. I mean, the truth is, have we all really embraced who we are in terms of what we love, or are we defined by what other people think or what other people say we have to do? I know a lot of people who work in jobs for which they have no skills, and I know a lot of people have most of their dreams put to the wayside by the time their lives are over. So this particular year, I've now while Touche PR has always been a passion project. Indian Terrain, as you know, is my family business. I'm a key player in terms of decision making as far as various aspects of that go. This particular year, I put aside to be a motivational speaker, to be an identity advocate, because I can. I am luckily have put myself in a position where I have the ability to reach out to people and make change. Because I think in the 2020 world that we're living in, it's not just economic or commerce, social commerce is also important. So for example, I was thinking about applying for my MBA in 2021. And of course, everybody wants to go to either Harvard, Wharton, or Stanford. My dreams are no different. And the biggest question that they all ask is, what change have you made in the world? Not how much money have you made for yourself. So that, now that we're living into 2020, this is the question being asked today of leaders, of thinkers, of people who are setting an example. And I believe that if leaders can embrace their own identity and wield that as a superpower, they can then bring strength to their workforce, bring strength to their dreams, and be smarter, wiser, because you will not waste that much time worrying about what somebody else thinks, because your dreams are truly yours alone, and you can afford to change your mind as many times as you want to, because it's your life. Now, while I said I have, again, in a minute addressed a whole lot of issues, perhaps in one fell swoop, but Mr. Ram will probably notice that there have been some changes since my 2015 speech and my 2021. But I believe I have also grown and matured, because because what did I realize while being a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, a second generation business leader, somebody with, because we are all, especially second generation, we have immense pressure to perform, especially because the people who have gone before us are brilliant, right? So how do we be more brilliant? It's trust me, we all have to find out our own way to be special, to make And because the common denominator of every discussion today is comparison, right? Look at what the other guy is doing. How do we shift our thinking from what is the other guy doing and spend our entire time looking over the fence at the neighbor's house, than to focus on our own and see if we are in the right business, if we're doing the best we can, if we have the best teams, and more importantly, are we our best selves? Because you can't fix others unless you fix yourself. So with that, I will conclude my little sort of very fast-tracked life story, but I will be happy to go into different aspects. I mean, like I said, I quickly recapped a very large international education. I did give you the background of my accident, which pretty much most people said I would not get up from a wheelchair in 2002. But in 2020, I'm addressing CII Young Indians. So that is how life can change. Okay, my grandmother, who, God bless her, she's no more with us, but she said, oh, Ella seriaido. I also realized that that's not true. Ella, it will not get seriaido by itself. Okay, so that is one problematic, slightly South Indian issue that you all will face. And I also face it. So I don't know, maybe North Indian also, but I'm just saying South Indians will say Ella seriaido. But it is not Ella seriaido, and neither is it a murga situation. Okay, both are two ends of the spectrum. We are not either of those things. I think we can live in the middle. So while I had a global perspective, I must, I have to give credit to my family, because most families will keep you at home because God forbid something else happens. Okay, and that was the time they set me free. And I have probably made more mistakes or failed more times than I have. But because I have done that and come through it and had so many lessons on identity, my successes have been resounding and much bigger than any of those failures. So I think both have to live together. And I recently gave a TEDx talk on December 8th, 2019. Actually, that was the time I actually decided to take up identity advocacy seriously. And I remember having to put my entire 18-year-old story into 14 minutes. And you actually have to memorize in TED. You can't do this chilled out conversation and stuff. You have to. So I spent 1 week memorizing that. And if you go off script, they will start reminding you in your ear. And you can't step out of that round light also. But I mean, TED obviously was a very big personal achievement for me. And when I was telling that story, I realized at the end of it that in all my recounting of my life, I did not say it did not hurt. It hurt a lot. It was very difficult. But I always, I think, spoke or wanted to position my life from a position of strength and not a position of weakness. Will I get my face back? I will not. Will I ever be that beautiful girl that I was in the mirror? No, I will not. The girl in the mirror and myself are still not the same. We are friends on some good days. We are not friends on bad days. And these are my struggles. But I'm sure you all have your own. And I'm sure they're all as resounding to you as mine are to me. So, I mean, but because the narrative today is so much about how good are you? Are you good enough? But what is that enough? Good enough? Like, who's enough? Is it yours or is it somebody else's definition? So what I want to say is, like, in all of that, in the roar of difficulty, there was nothing came easy, nothing. And, funnily, especially when, many people think that because I have a background of what one would call privilege, because, my parents were able to educate me the way they were, nothing that I lost could be bought back with money. Nothing. So when that happens, life is an equalizer, right? So life is an equalizer for all of us, and for me especially. But it's just I feel like in summing up, again, I'm going to make my last attempt. It's education has been a big part, travel has been a big part, overcoming difficulty has been the denominator of every circumstance. But I have barely, and this was the end of my TED talk, I said I'm barely through my 30s, and my bucket list, which I had planned for myself when I was 18, is finished, is done. Now I have time to make a new one, and maybe I will make another one when I'm 50 and another one when I'm 70. Because so this is to tell you all that what happens to you is a very, very small part of what you can create out of your life. In fact, you can use it in a way to jump off and do better. So for me, my most debilitating moments have been my most defining moments. And the reason I requested Ram to put identity as the topic and not serial entrepreneurship or vertical business thinking or 10x growth, because even I know all of that stuff. Okay, we could talk about that, but I feel like you're all probably hearing about that from a billion other leaders across the world. Okay, they can tell you about cross-functional whatever. Okay, but no, my point, I wanted to share this because I feel this is what's valuable and this is what people are not talking about. So to bring back identity to the forefront of entrepreneurship, because the only discussion of identity in India, for example, is in the very fringes, for example, in terms of sexual orientation and stuff like that. But I don't believe that it needs to be a fringe discussion. It is a very, very important discussion and even more important for entrepreneurs. So with that, I will conclude. Hopefully, I have not taken too much time.
That was an amazing speech, Anjali.
Ram, we are not hearing you, Ram.
He sounded.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Anjali. Ram, I'm just muting you for some time. Anjali, thank you very much. The session was really great, and we learned about your struggles and how to overcome your struggles, and today how you are a successful person. So over to Faisal to moderate the session. So he has a compiled set of questions which he will be throwing out to you, and you'll be taking down from them. So Faisal, over to you, Faisal.
Yeah, sure. We are getting some music sound.
Yeah, muted other people. Okay.
Okay. Wow, Anjali, it was one incredible story. It was full of lessons for us to emulate as entrepreneurs. And you have been in NDTV, and I'm feeling a little hesitant to ask you questions. And
no, it was a feature show. News anchor, so you can relax.
Fine.
It was a
right. Okay. Fine. Okay. We have a few questions to discuss with you about embracing one's identity as an entrepreneur, be it as a superpower in the pursuit of excellence. And actually, there were many questions from our members, but we have compiled it and would like to ask you a few questions on your behalf.
Sure.
So the first question I'm asking you on a negative note, don't take me wrong. Actually, negative feedback. The first question I want to ask you is about the negative feedbacks. As we grow, we are prone to negative feedbacks, and more in the digital platform. So we would like to ask you, how do we deal with it while we embrace our entrepreneurial identity?
I think that is a brilliant question, and I'm glad you, because while I had a cursory look at some of the questions, I didn't know you would choose the big gun to start, choose the AK-47 out of all of your questions to start shooting. Well played. So no, I think that is a very good question, and I think managing negative feedback, not just from the world, but from our own mind itself, is a critical skill that we all need to have. So especially for entrepreneurs, because you have let's split up negative feedback. You're going to get it from your family, you're going to get it from your investors, you're going to get it from your teammates, you're going to get it from your friends, and then you're going to get it from your own mind. So I will deal with all of these separately. Now, and digital, I'll come to it last, because as you know, trolling and bullying and negative conversations and stuff are pretty much already quite a discussed subject, but I'll come to that in the end. Understand that I believe that entrepreneurs, for example, you're doing something better than somebody else has done before, which means you're definitely stepping into new ground. Now, what is the likelihood for this to happen flawlessly? If it was going to be a flawless journey, somebody would have done it before and somebody would have done it better than you. So I believe that negative feedback, if it's taken constructively and used for one's own betterment, I would always believe that entrepreneurs should consider it as a plus. The last thing an entrepreneur wants or needs is a bunch of yes men around him or her saying, oh, sir, ma'am, you are great. This is all fine. So they get a raise, and at the end of the day, your investors will back out and you will flatline, right? So ultimately, what is the most important thing for an entrepreneur? You need to keep showing results. You need to keep your team engaged. And most of all, you need to remain inspired, right? Because an entrepreneur starts a journey pretty much taking all the risk for himself. So he's not doing it just because. So I think negative feedback, but one should be able to differentiate between constructive negative feedback and also the difference between people who are just trying to bring you down. There is a clear difference, because if someone is going to give you constructive feedback, for example, from outside or within your organization in terms of how you could do better, it's always worthwhile giving it a listen. And my advice, in fact, would be to reflect on it for some time, because it never sounds good when you hear it the first time. I mean, who likes listening to anything negative? But the best thing is to think about it, reflect on it, sleep on it. Ideally, I suggest all entrepreneurs should have a mentor. Mentorship is extremely important. Or if you are lucky enough to have a board of advisors, and because they always will have a little bit more experience than you, and take it to them, people whom you know that have your best interests at heart. So that's the way I would talk about in terms of professional negative feedback for the entrepreneur. In terms of jealous people, there are always people who just do create drama for the sake of creating drama. And one should be but an entrepreneur usually should be convinced of his own path, to the extent that he should not get too derailed by someone's negative feedback when they're saying it just to make you feel bad, because those two feedbacks are very, very different. So as long as an entrepreneur is clear of his journey, that he just wants to get better at his work and be more efficient, more productive, more inspired, then negative feedback should continue coming. In fact, I would tell entrepreneurs that if negative feedback stops coming, especially from within your organization, then you're not doing something right. In fact, you might be surrounded by a bunch of yes men who just want to, float along, make money on your dime, and will move on to another job. Because the people who really care about it, which is your employee set, people who care about it, about the journey as much as you do, will definitely tell you when they feel something is wrong. And if we would, and the day negative feedback stops, you must have done better than any other most successful entrepreneur out there. But I think negative feedback is a very necessary theme that needs to happen. I think we need to allow it. I think entrepreneurs need to allow it to take place and allow it to reflect, because your ideas will never get any better unless they are challenged, right? So challenge is the most important thing. So let's look at negative feedback as structural challenging and utilize them for that value. Most entrepreneurs, please don't even give a heed to negative feedback on the digital platform. You are far too important and far too inspired to listen to people who are sitting on Twitter all day long, because they probably don't have jobs.
Wonderfully addressed, Anjali. And then the next question I would ask you is, it's a skeptical question I would ask many people, but then I need an answer from you. Entrepreneurship identity demands a high level of consistency, at the same time requires a fair amount of experimentation. How can we balance the two worlds?
Excellent question. God, I should really get after the person who wrote these. They must have thought about, let me really make her work today. So I think consistency, first we need to define it. What is consistent? We have to be consistent in what? In terms of our commitment to the goal, in terms of the quality of our output, in terms of our commitment to our business and the people who work with us, right? But delegation and decentralization will eventually have to happen as your business grows, right? Now, I believe leaders have two options. They can create followers, which is an additional process, or you can create more leaders, which is always multiplicative. So when you create more leaders, you will feel initially, especially for entrepreneurs who tend to be, I have seen a lot of young ones, and I experienced it myself. So we feel that, oh, I started this is all mine. I need to be, in the middle of every decision. In fact, when my father used to make the odd comment about what I was doing, I would not like it at all, because I would think he never knew what I was going through. But the truth is, decentralizing is eventually, I don't think one person can do everything. I think that's a very utopian kind of assumption, which will, and especially if you're successful, it's going to become more impossible even more quickly. So my best advice on how to manage it would be to create leaders that embody the same DNA that you do on a daily basis. You started your business for a reason. Make sure that they come to work for that very same reason, and that they can continue to embody your DNA to the rest of, to the teams that they work with, and then create more leaders, and then create more leaders. The reason I feel often entrepreneurs don't feel I find that they feel very sort of insecure and don't want to delegate is when, they feel that the business is going to be taken away from them. But how can the business be taken away from you if you are instilling in your in your colleagues and your employees the same DNA that you are feeling? They were maybe even better versions of you, right? So I believe we have to always surround ourselves with people who challenge us and learn to delegate when we have to, because otherwise, I mean, you can never even get sick. And what if you do? Your business will stop. I mean, because I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs in my time, young people who think that who are, you know, in the pink of health, don't have any second in command, no third in command. There'll be a huge gap between them and the next level of workers in their organization. So they're always over leveraged, overstretched, stretched, frustrated, and miserable. And I ask them why. And they say, because I'm tired all the time. I'm just like, because you're doing everything yourself. You're not delegating. But they say, oh, the next guy won't be able to do it good, as well as me. I'm like, how do you know that? If you train him, he will, and you have to give him the chance because some investor gave you a chance, right? Everybody gave somebody a chance. That's how we all started. We didn't come born as the entrepreneur. So my advice is that delegation is necessary. The sooner you get used to it, the better. Just remember, as long as your value systems and your DNA is passed on to the other leaders, you will never feel that level of insecurity because your company can never get hijacked from you. You will only get more leaders like yourself. But if you create a bunch of followers who just come to work, do their job and go home, they could be working for anyone else just as much as they could be working for you. So God forbid you get a cold or can't come to work one day, will your client not get his meeting? So you need to create a system that can survive without you. And that is the true merit and litmus test of a successful entrepreneur.
Super. You rightly said that delegation is the only way to balance the two worlds. And the next is another follow-up question. You spoke about delegation. And now how to delegate without getting into a complex of losing control or losing relevance?
Losing control, losing control, I will connect it to my previous answer. I think I covered that in terms of delegation. I think I find in terms of when entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves, because they feel nobody else can do it as well as them, and because they feel insecure, they at some point will burn out because everyone has to sleep at some point. And when that happens, things will go awry. Losing relevance, I think definitely is more of an issue for entrepreneurs in today's world, because the difference, let's go back in time. For example, if you look at the difference between 2004 and 2008, right, was not as much as the difference between 2008 and 2012. And that was not as much as the difference between 2012 and 18, because the change is happening so much more rapidly in recent times than it was before. Now, I wonder, for example, what would Indian terrain be if my father had Facebook when he started it, or LinkedIn, right? We don't know. I'm just saying that things were much slower then. And now today, for us who are starting businesses in today's world, things are very, very fast. So relevance becomes, can go very, very quickly. I think the only way and this is continue to adapt to technology, is to not think of life in generation. This is my generation, this is their generation. Remain generation fluid. The more technology you adapt to, there's no point saying, oh, you're on the stupid Snapchat. First, next day, people are doing business with it. I'm be online or offline, continue to read, continue to talk to young people. Don't just surround yourself just with your generation, because you already know what your friends know. But do you know what your junior knows, and do you know what your junior's junior knows? Because now with the advent of technology, I believe that they know a lot more than we think. And as long as you stay abreast of things, I believe that relevance never goes away.
Then one individual's identity in an entrepreneurial role.
Wow, loaded. Okay, so it's what defines an individual? Okay, so I think that when we sort of, especially let's assume you can be an entrepreneur at any age. You know, I've seen there are 17-year-olds that do it, there are 27-year-olds, there are 47-year-olds that do it. But I believe
I think your father was like, I don't know, how old was your father when he got into it?
My father he was 10 years of, he was an IPS officer for 10 years. So he only started his business, I think, at 33.
Okay.
33, 34. Not that young. So it's, but the most important thing about identity has got to be your self-belief. And you have to have a good handle on your dreams, aspirations, and grit. So there are two aspects of it. I don't think it is the amount of money that you have, how you physically look, who your parents are, whether you're from Germany or Gumdi Pundi, it shouldn't matter. I know that these are very lofty thoughts, but I believe that your identity should be entirely your intention. Because what are you even before you were born? You are a thought, right? So my belief system, if your intention is to succeed and you understand how you want to get there and you want to try, say, 2 or 3 ways, it is that belief in that you are going to walk that path day in and day out and see where it takes you. That is the commitment that defines your identity. It's not எனக்கு இந்த connection இருக்கு அந்த connection இருக்கு, because if you don't have clear identity and if you don't know what you want and who you are and commit to yourself, it doesn't matter who you know, you will not succeed. And I find a lot of people define their identity backwards. They define it by who they know, who they are born to, how much capital they have. Look at the state of COVID. It just completely turned the world upside down. What people thought they had before COVID, they will not have coming out, whether it's a job, whether it's a bank balance, whether it's a line of credit. So my point is, I think for an entrepreneur, it is his intention, his self-belief, and his commitment to success and excellence. I want to come back to the theme of today's conversation, which is the pursuit of excellence. I will tell you the easiest thing to achieve in this world today is mediocrity. I always tell people ask me what my biggest fear is. My biggest fear is not death, is not definitely not public speaking, is not caterpillars. It is actually, my biggest fear is being ordinary. I don't ever want to be ordinary. And I believe every entrepreneur's commitment is to pursue excellence and to remain and continue on the path of being extraordinary, whatever it is he chooses to do, regardless of what happens, COVID or otherwise.
Super. Okay. Before we move on to the participant questions, I would like to ask you one last question, Anjali. Do you think why some become entrepreneurs and not others become entrepreneurs?
Well done. Okay. Yeah, hopefully that is your last big weapon. But yeah. No, I think that is a very good question, and I'm going to answer it very frankly. Okay. I'm not much of a diplomat.
We want it that way.
I'm not much of a diplomat. So, and I don't think I think especially in a circle such as ours today, we need to tell each other the truth. That's the only way we will grow. You will hear enough of this bhashan and gyan coming from all the Zoom calls happening across the world where people are telling you things you already know. But what is the truth? Because I'll tell you, the difference is, and I'll connect it to my previous point, is the ones who who end up becoming successful entrepreneurs are those who are committed to excellence regardless of how many times they fail. Okay. I also find that the ones who are successful entrepreneurs are the ones who stick to the goal, who stick to the plan, regardless of what other people say. I also feel that successful entrepreneurs are the ones who continue to keep learning. They are never done. And they don't act like, oh, yanake ella theriyum. Okay, because that is the first position to your decline. The day a successful entrepreneur to that point says he knows everything, he has lost the game. I also feel, I always believe that you can play with your circumstances. You can create a relationship with your circumstances. You can make peace with them. You can surmount them. You can change them. You can change your mind. I also find successful entrepreneurs are people who are not afraid to change their mind. A lot of times you start on a path for 4 or 5 years. Let's assume it doesn't work out. Do you have to continue to burn yourself and your money doing that same thing? இல்ல அந்த மாமி சொல்லுவா ஏதாவது, they will think நான் எல்லாம் change பண்ணிட்டேன், plan change பண்ணிட்டேன், நான் consistency கிடையாது. No. Successful entrepreneurs often change their mind many times over, because you will not know your mistakes unless you make it, right? Nobody knows their mistakes before starting out on the journey. That's not true about anyone, including Mark Zuckerberg. So my point to you is, and let's talk about the people who are not successful. They are not just the people who don't do the things I just mentioned. They're also people who are bad planners. I believe that people are very bad planners. I believe that, generally when people start their day, they have 10 things that they want to do, and they will not put it even in a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10. Okay, this is going to sound a little very simplified, but I believe that I have seen they end their day with not even 1 out of 10 of those finished. 30% of one done, 20% of the other one will be done, 40% of the other one will be done, but not even one is finished. I always say, please close the loop. Successful entrepreneurs always close the loop. They will not go to sleep unless they do. Unsuccessful entrepreneurs are the ones who can say, let's take care of it tomorrow. No successful entrepreneur can afford to say, let's take care of it tomorrow, because between today and tomorrow, you have lost an incredible amount of faith, money, and trust. I'll say this because especially when I was running e-commerce, and I said this to many people, e-commerce is a 24/7 business. For example, how many of you shop on Myntra? I'm assuming quite a few people have tried it. So let's say you have that end of reason sale, right? Which is on the 2 days in December, and 2 days in December, 2 days in January. So at that time, for example, we will have all our stocks inverted into those warehouses, but there is always a risk of stocking out. And if you, for example, stock out, and there is some technical glitch in the system, your brand can get delisted from the entire platform altogether. And that 6 crores that you plan to make in those 2 days can become zero. So that is the reality of today's business. People, you need to be vigilant. You need to be awake. You need to be around the clock. Do you think I could ever afford to have taken care of this the next day? No chance. And many times especially when you need all hands on deck, successful entrepreneurs will not bother what their hierarchy is. They will go open the gate if they have to. They will call the guy and they won't make somebody else do it. If the other guy is not available, they will do it themselves. Okay, I find a lot of unsuccessful entrepreneurs are the ones who are in love with the idea of entrepreneurship, about the fact that it brings you to CII, that it brings you to TEI, that it will bring you to MMA, and you can have all these friends, and you can go to these clubs, and you can say these things. That is not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the absolute love of the chase, of waking up every morning, about getting your team together and throwing 2000% at it. And then, making some money. That's always, and that is always there. And I hope all of you continue to make it. But I found that, often in the first couple of years, these are the few defining factors that will separate the boys from the men. The unsuccessful ones are not necessarily bad people or whatever. They are just people who take things a little bit easily, who are maybe too dependent on luck, and who are also a little more dependent on the fluffy aspects. How does being a businessman look? I think how being a businessman feels is more important than being how a businessman looks. I'm more interested in a successful entrepreneur always has a better work ethic and not necessarily reflective in the watch he wears. And I think that sometimes we look for success and successful entrepreneurship in the wrong areas. So my advice is always, it starts from within. Your work ethic needs to remain brilliant. As hard as you studied for IIT or your 10th exam or whatever it is, another 100,000% times you have to start. You don't start working less. You have to start believing and being even more disciplined.
As Harsh said, it was a headshot. Okay. Thank you very much. And the first set of questions is done. And now over to Ram to take over the participant questions.
Thank you, Faisal. Hope I am audible right now, loud and clear, right?
Yes, Ram. Yes.
Yeah, no more the
Okay, thank you, Faisal. That was such an amazing question which you asked, and the answer undoubtedly நான் சொல்லணும்னு நினைச்சேன்னா சூடு போட்ட மாதிரி இருந்துச்சு உங்க ஆன்சர்ஸ். We had so many sessions in this COVID time, all webinars, and the perspective which you explained was completely altogether a different one. Thank you very much, Ms. Anjali. So here we have few questions from the audience here with us. Kalyan, if you can unmute Mr. Hanif Tayyub, Rotarian Hanif Tayyub.
I'm doing that.
Sir, you can ask your question, Mr.
Hanif sir, you are unmuted.
Hello, Anjali.
Hello. How are you, sir?
Wonderful talk. Thank you very much for that. My question to you is that how important is self-talk for rebouncing?
Is self-talk? Self-talk, very good question. In fact, I think that, many people have in articles that have been written in conversations, people have called me the Phoenix. I'm not sure if I'm worthy of that title, but I believe that there are many entrepreneurs out there who are worthy of the title of the Phoenix, because I believe that bouncing back, like you say, especially in today's times, is going to be almost not even a choice. It's going to be necessary for more people than we ever imagined. So I think even people who thought they were coasting are going to have to rethink and come and rebound from where they were. So talking to yourself, critical things, and your voice to yourself needs to be the clearest, because the voices around you are going to be shaky, are going to be nervous, are going to be divided, and are overall going to be questioning. So the general environment of worry and concern and negativity is very, very overwhelming, especially for someone when the chips are down. Because you're usually, if you're looking for a rebound, that's usually your chips are down, right? So that's when, everyone is telling you what you did wrong, what you could have done differently, what you could have done better. But that is what comebacks are for. And everybody loves a comeback. In fact, I mean, whether it's Roger Federer, whether it is, whether it's Steve Jobs, I mean, I'm using the most famous of examples, but even between all of us, whether it be my story or your story, I think that there is a lot more to be said about an entrepreneur's worth when he's able to come back. And a lot of coming back has to do with understanding that you are going to be your only friend for some time, maybe even for a long time. And trust me, you are better off being your own best friend than listening to the gloom and doom around you, because nothing you hear is necessarily going to be good, especially when you're preparing for a rebound, because only you know that you can come back. Everybody else is looking at data, right? They're looking at all the mistakes you made. And if they put it in an Excel sheet and put it, the success rate is probably less than 50%, because that's just mathematics. But what about the part about your spirit and the ability for you to talk to yourself and convince yourself that you are capable of to not just come back, but come back 10 times stronger, is extremely important. And I will conclude this thought by saying it is very, very lonely on the top. Okay. But I think that is a loneliness that we entrepreneurs and leaders have to get used to, because you cannot lead if you have 10,000 friends talking to you and blah, 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 and having all that conversation going on. Okay. If you realize, I mean, you can be the wolf or you can be the sheep. And wolves always go alone. So you want to hunt or you want to get hunted. So my point is, wolves, I think that, just to use an animal analogy, have as many comebacks. They hunt, they prey, they have off, they get hungry, and, they continue to survive. So I believe that you and me, as long as we can continue talking to ourselves and our voice doesn't waver, I think that we will be okay. But we also need to be clear that we can't be reaching out for succor and for, people to say, Parwala, you Ella said, it will not be, it is going to be painful. It's going to be lonely, but lonely is the head that wears the crown and heavy is the head that wears the crown. But ultimately we all want the crown, right? So I think I think sometimes entrepreneurs we are not clear. Sometimes we tend to like to be a little idealistic about what it takes to be a winner. Because I don't think winning, being popular, being comfortable, chilling out, having quality of life, all of that doesn't come together. You have to make some trade-offs. So when we do make those trade-offs to succeed, self-talk is the only way that will get you there. So that's a great question. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Arnold German as a hotelier with a question. Kalyan, if you can unmute.
Yeah, I'm already unmuted. Arnold, you are unmute. Please ask your question.
Very good evening. It was a very wonderful session. I just wanted to know, as you were telling about a lot of bucket lists that you had in your life, what was the biggest bucket list that you had and you achieved it in your life?
That is a good question. That's a fun question. You're somebody who like is, taking it easy on me. So I actually, in my family, I'm the first one to have gone abroad and studied. So I wanted to study in the UK. I went to Cambridge. I did a 1-year course in textiles in Manchester. I lived all over the US. I had a job in New York City. I learned Spanish. Like I'd mentioned earlier, I moved to Mexico and lived with a host family that spoke only Spanish. So I was forced to learn Spanish because nobody knew anything else. So I used to mime for 2 weeks. I was miming and then I learned. And every day I would go to the university. It was in a place called Guadalajara in the south of Mexico. So it's a very, very Mexican part of Mexico, not commercialized like Mexico City. So I used to go to university, take classes, and then, take some dance lessons, come dancing, go learn dancing all over the city on my way back home. I wanted to start a company. I started it. I wanted to grow an e-commerce business. I grew it. I wanted to work in media. I did that. I was on TV. I was on radio. I was a model. I was on a cover of a magazine, many magazines. I've traveled a significant part of the world. So I'm pretty much done with my bucket list a while ago. I'm making a new one now. So
that's nice, very inspiring.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. That was a nice question.
So now
the person who most enjoyed the session, Mr. Harsh. Kalyan, if you can unmute Mr. Harsh.
Yeah, already unmuted Harsh.
Thanks for speaking out to me, Ram. Hello, Anjali. Very good evening. I have a very. I'd like you to speak about any experience you have managing a bureaucrat or a diplomat in India, his representation in India. Like, are you any particular bureaucrat
a bureaucrat or a politician?
Yes.
No, in fact, I will share a funny story though. Do you know?
Yes, please. I'm sure there's some.
There is a funny story, but no, I'm not managing any one of them. We once had the opportunity to do PR and manage this guy who's in jail. Who is that Dera? That guy from Haryana, that God man. There is one. What is his name? Mr. Manik, if you are anywhere there, please tell me what his name is. There is a God man who went to jail for doing some really, terrible acts. I don't know if you guys know his name. His name is Ram Rahim something.
Okay.
So this very scary, and he was somebody who had major security, and he had all this money, and he was very popular until he got busted. So this happened before he got caught by the cops, and now subsequently is in jail. So when Touche was in its heights, one of his henchmen called me and said, "My name is Insan." I said, "What do you mean your name is Insan? Insan means human being." So he's like, "Yes, we are all Insans like my leader." And I'm just like, I started getting very worried. He said, "No, he's coming and we will pay you." And the number he quoted was also so obnoxiously high. I was a vendor. I didn't have such high opinions of myself or my agency that we deserved that kind of money. So it was the quote itself that made me really panicked. So usually I don't reach out to my parents for advice on these things, but I did. I thought I should call I didn't call my dad because he'll freak out. So I called my mom, lesser level of fear. So I told her, I said, "Listen, they're offering a crazy amount of money." They were saying some 20 lakhs for 2 days or something, just to do PR for this guy. So unless you're hiding something really terrible that he's done, or hiding some kind of activities, it can't be that amount of money. So she was quite clear. She said, "Please just walk away from it. Do not accept any of their phone calls, because you'll probably be taking money for covering up something that you will not have anticipated." And she was right, because so many years later, now he's in jail. So yes, that is the closest I came to touching something. He wasn't a politician, but he was a pretty big religious leader. So I think I did the right thing. We needed the money though, so trust me, I was tempted because nobody pays. So how it is, everyone, "I'll pay you later." When and I'll share this with you, since I'm sure, since we're a group of like-minded individuals. People think that when you're from a family business, when your family has a business, your own business doesn't need money. I'm like, excuse me, I need money as much as you do. What makes it? Because they assume that you're getting money from either your family business. First of all, it's not a family business, it's a public limited company. People don't read. Okay, either they are not aware of what's going on. So when I started Touche, it was my P&L, it was my revenue. Whatever I made, I had to cover my own costs. But people would not pay. They were like, "Oh, kind of attitude," which was really terrible. And so when this God man suggested, his henchman said he'll give us money, I was very tempted. But my mother was like, "Listen, it's a terrible idea," and she was right. So yes, did not go in that direction beyond that. No politician
Thank you.
either.
So we have one
I
last
guess
question
it's
from.
Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh,
Correct.
if I'm right.
That's the guy. That's the guy.
Okay, so we'll
Kalyan,
go
if you
one
can.
last question. Selva Kumar, I'm just unmuting. Selva, you're unmute. You can ask your question. Selva?
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, fine. Selva from Trichy.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Okay. What do you think about the realization or transformation changes that might reflect between an employer and employee's relationships after the COVID crisis?
Can you repeat that? That's not clear. Is it possible?
What do you think about the realization or transformation changes that might reflect between an employer and employee relationship post-COVID crisis?
I think that's a very, very valid question, sir. And I think different business leaders and entrepreneurs are going to experience this with their employees at different levels. I think the truth of the matter is many businesses, unless they, especially smaller businesses, unless they find some kind of lifeline in terms of cash, they're not going to be able to survive, or they're going to have that much belief system with their employees that they stay without being compensated. I think the first issue is going to be that of compensation, in terms of, I think employees will understand if they are very closely connected with the company's goals, and also if they're able to make that adjustment. See, it's two-sided, right? I mean, there are some, for example, I know a lot of young startups where, there are a bunch of single people working there, say 4 20-year-old guys. They don't have families to take care of. They don't have kids. So I think they may be able to, keep, to stay the course with the entrepreneur, their leader, maybe perhaps for longer than those mouths to feed and people to educate, etc. So I think that this is going to be a mix of what employees from a business, from the employer, from the entrepreneur's point, is going to have to do with his presence of mind, his ability to downsize, his ability to pivot, his ability to prevent his cash hemorrhaging, his ability to plan the next 8 months without going under. That's going to be his cross to bear. That is going to define his relationship with his employees in terms of providing them with a role and a job that can give them money. I think for the employees, they're going to have to make a certain adjustment in terms of understanding that this situation may persist for longer than just May 3rd. And I think that they may say, for example, the kind of expenses that they had or the kind of lifestyle that they were used to may not actually be physically or financially plausible for the next foreseeable maybe year or two. So I think the mental shift has to be made by the employees, and they have to decide whether it's well worth sticking with their current positions or their commitment to their bosses. And I think entrepreneurs' duty is to see how best they can minimize the impact. Like I know, for example, my brother is still paying his factory workers, but I know that it's going to get more difficult in the coming months because their expenditure is in crores. So obviously they are working with the banks to make sure that that the situation is kept under control. I, for example, Touche was is a small team. And right now, for example, we never saw anything like COVID, but we were definitely a bootstrapped organization. And we had to have our employees understand that we could not pay so-called market average, which is the number that everybody loves to give. They go on LinkedIn and they check out the market average, which is given by Google, and then they'll quote you that number and then say you have to pay it. But I mean, not to make light of the situation, but I think, sir, there's going to be some understanding on both sides, and hopefully not too much of a fallout, but I'm definitely anticipating there to be some fallout, even if both sides try to adjust as much as possible.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, Selva Kumar. It's actually a power-packed session for 1 hour. Too much to process. We still need another time to sit and actually rethink what you have all told. We have a recording here. I think many will love to play back and listen to you again. So thank you very much. Thanks for an amazing session. Kalyan, if you can sum up what Ms. Anjali told in this 1 hour, would be
sure,
grateful.
Definitely. Thank you, Ram. So Anjali, thanks for the session. And as we know, like Anjali Rajgopal is a survivor, a fighter, and an inspiration, all rolled in one. And from what I've listened to her is like I would like to make a small quote from Abdul Kalam. So you have to dream before your dreams come true. So that's what the entire session means completely. And I've taken 10 notes from the session. Like first thing is like letting discouragement overwhelm you. So that's the first thing. Like you never let your discouragement to overwhelm you, and that's the first thing that you need to overcome. And you should always be confident to deny your current situation and never be dwelling in the past. And procrastination is another thing that you need to be overcoming. And last but not the least, like waiting for help to chase you is something that you should be avoiding. And also like taking it personally when people judge you is something that you should be avoiding. And don't dwell on the negative as well. So that's something that you need to overcome and move past. And don't compare yourself to others. And again, don't try to get approval for your team. So those are the most important things that I observed from the entire session. And as you say, like there are two wolves fighting within you, and one is evil, one is good. And which one will win when somebody asks? Like the answer is the one that you feed. So taking back the wolf analogy, like thank you again for the wonderful session. And since you are Spanish, like gracious for the session, kind of. Thank you.
De nada. Ram, I'm happy to, if anyone has any further questions, I'm just saying I'm available. I'm happy to answer it at another time, or if you guys feel that you need something more from me, I'm happy to give it. Just
sure. We will be we have shared your social media handles as well. So anyone wants, they can connect you on the social media. And
100%. Where can I put it? Where would you like me to send it?
No, it's already shared in the chat.
has already shared it in the group.
Done. Yes. So I'm very much accessible. So please feel free to reach out. My life's work, at least this year, I've allocated to doing this work. So
superb. Thank you very much, Anjali. It was indeed a great session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Request everyone to give a big round of applause. I don't know how you'll be hearing it, but a big round of applause from all of us. Thank you.
Amazing
Thank you
session, ma'am. Wonderful. Thank you.
So I've allowed people to unmute and give a big round of applause, maybe.
People, if you want to give you a big round of applause, you can unmute yourself and show your congratulations to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you,
ma'am. Friends, before leaving for the next tomorrow's session, we have a session from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock tomorrow. It's on the market compliance, industrial compliance and taxation. So it's going to be two great speakers with us. So please be available and please come be prepared with your questions for a great session tomorrow. Thank you once again.
Tomorrow is going to be a 2-hour session, and the session starts at 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. and each will have 4 to 6. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.